I was going to
Great.
ask you guys at Connecticut Innovations if you have a plan for finding a way that it doesn't rain every single weekend. Is there a way that can we be innovative about that and move the system such that it rains during the week? Although I guess Friday doesn't actually count as a weekend, but I think we're in a
No,
record in Connecticut in terms of weekends in a row. It's been wet.
yeah, no solutions there yet. We did just invest in a flood insurance company. So if that's of interest to you all, we can follow up on that one. But the extreme weather events are increasing, and a shockingly low number of people have flood insurance. So the massive market opportunity, and hopefully it'll help protect a lot of people from those increasing risks.
That's a cool idea. So the flood is basically from the NFIP, right? Nationally, the big carriers don't provide it. Yeah.
Correct. So in the past, it's been a little bit of a distorted market, but the NFIP only covers at-risk coastal populations. So right along the Gulf Coast, those people can get covered. If you're outside of those zones, though, and increasingly the mass floodings are happening outside of those zones, the NFIP can't expand to cover you. So they're kind of in a challenging spot where that program is pretty indebted. It's limited in terms of how much it can grow. So the private market is really starting to get smart on the risk and pricing it and working with the carriers.
And that's sort of riverine flooding mostly, like up in upstate, and yeah, well, not necessarily upstate, just away from the coast. Okay, with respect to time, then why don't we start off the folks that are on. This is our revisitation from the Connecticut Innovations Initiative and the Innovation Lab and the ClimateTech Fund. I don't know if David, you want to talk a little bit about the lab and then turn it over to Drew for talk a little bit more about the fund. And then we have two entrepreneurial companies who are now members of the Innovation Lab and are working with them to forward things. One focused on EVs and one focused on energy management software, both very innovative. So I'll let Drew and David sort of tee them up, and then at about 11:45, we'll turn it over to the first group, our AmpUp, an electric vehicle software company and network provider, to talk about their work, and then open it up to questions amongst us, and then have Enertiv come in and talk about their stuff. So with that, oh, and just a process for those who are on and they come on, if you could mute yourselves, that would be great, assuming you're not talking. And then I will recognize if people have questions, raise your hand in the chat, and I will recognize you. We'll probably push that till the end, and then we can have a conversation that way, or you can jump in if we're in the Q&A part. So with that, I'll turn it over to David, and maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit and then set the stage for today.
Yeah, so good morning. I've seen a few of you before. Kathleen and I met in person once or twice. So I live near Yukon. I work for Connecticut Innovations, for the state's venture capital firm. I'm here with Drew, who actually runs our climate fund. He'll talk about that. We have two big things going on. So we have a fund, and we have the governor's modernization statute that he put on the books in 2021. It was meant to support government agencies or big corporates in the state more quickly modernizing, and that includes climate endeavors. And so we kind of got engaged with Department of Housing on some things. We presented to this group once. It was a very fruitful discussion because two things happened. One was one of the companies that presented, EnviroPower, ended up doing a pilot with Franklin, thanks to one of the architects on the call. And then Butterfly got engaged with the Southbury Hotel and did a $2 million proposal on that. So both private deals. But our actual statute and legislation allows us, if you have a housing project with DOH or another state agency or a big company in the state, we'll actually put money behind it. We'll fund a validation phase, which is what EnviroPower was doing. So it was cogen in multifamily housing. And so we actually installed units. And we have a multitude of things that we work with. You're going to see two of those things today. But really, the governor's intention still is, and he was in our offices 2 weeks ago and we saw him, is just to really help accelerate the transition to sustainable, decarbonized infrastructure for the state. So anything we can do as a group to do that, we'll jump behind and support. Drew, do you want to talk about the launch of the Climate Fund?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. So we launched the fund about a year ago, and it's been really special to be a part of. Our real sweet spot with making these investments is to invest in companies that are at or around the Series A stage, which for us means companies that are generating revenue, that have proven out their business model and are really ready to scale and ramp up. And I think we've got two great companies from the portfolio that really represent companies at that inflection point, and ones that we think, the state is ready to partner with and is excited to really engage with on a much more serious level. So the fund's goals are really to build a portfolio of 25 to 30 companies across major greenhouse gas emitting sectors. So energy, transportation, buildings, agriculture, as well as adaptation and resilience related investments. And all the companies that we invest in have a physical presence in the state of Connecticut. It's really important that we work with companies that are committed to growing here and building a presence here, that are going to really be able to engage with our state and help our state hit its own decarbonization goals, which are substantial and are going to require a whole of government and public-private partnership effort to tackle. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that before we dive into the presentations, if anybody has them.
Sorry about that. I muted myself. Yeah, people are invited to jump in if you want a little bit more detail from Drew about the fund. I guess my question to you, Drew, would be what kind of things does the fund? I mean, what is it? Is it just basic operating support? Is it just an investment in the company? Do you own part of the company? I mean, how does it?
We provide venture equity dollars. So we are an owner of the company. We often take a board observer role. So we're on the board and helping these companies with governance, helping them with commercial partnerships in part often with Dave and his team. We help our companies identify other investors. We really roll up our sleeves, and our first investment is not the only investment. So we typically make 2 to 3 additional investments in our companies over the course of their life, scaling and building out their businesses. So it's really an early stage investment model where we take a hands-on approach with our companies.
It sets Connecticut apart. There's a few other states with venture funds, but we have a green bank. We have our own venture funds. We haven't asked for $1 from the state in over a decade. So it's actually called it's kind of a evergreen fund. So we continually reinvest the proceeds from the companies that we are exiting and invest those in new companies and create jobs in the state. So we have a double bottom line. We return capital and create new technology jobs in the state, which are typically higher revenue jobs for the state. But really, there's also job numbers. So we have close to 4,000 jobs in the state of Connecticut. Obviously, many more nationally in our companies, but it's one of our objectives.
And do you have is there something that triggers the exit at a certain point to move on to another company?
Yep. So, we look for companies that are either selling to a larger private company or would go public via an IPO. And a big part of our diligence is looking at, what are those exit opportunities for a company that we might invest in? How are they going to work with incumbents in the space? How do they scale? Who might buy them one day? So that's how we return the money. And like Dave said, we are very financial investors, even though we're part of the state. We look at margins, we look at financial projections, we look at competition, we look at technology readiness. All of those factors factor heavily into our diligence process.
Cool. Okay, and questions from anybody else who's on the line? And just for all of you, this is being recorded, and we make these available, I think you know this already, to the public and to the other members of the peer-to-peer who can't make it. So this will probably be posted early next week, Vicky, something like that. So the information will be evergreen at least through the fall and maybe the early spring of next year, something like that. Okay, then do we want to turn it over now to AmpUp? Okay.
I think it's Enertiv is going to go first.
Okay.
Was what we had in the schedule. And Dean, maybe could you give just a quick background? I sent it to Connell and to Matt, who are joining, but just to set the stage for them so they know kind of like who you guys are, just very quickly.
Yep. So we're a network of people in the state of Connecticut primarily, but also with participation from Massachusetts a bit, that has been looking at ways to share knowledge amongst practitioners in the multifamily housing space within the state and within the region, and with a specific focus on affordable multifamily, and how to push that to be as sustainable and I guess as we begin to move into decarbonization as they can be. So we established pre-pandemic a network meeting once a month, about 10 times a year, to share stories with each other about how we were doing, and bringing in experts like yourselves to help us focus ourselves on future things, I guess, about technologies that we may not be that familiar with, but that are coming our way. And so it's just sort of a combination of the groups sharing with each other what they're learning about projects they're doing, and then also sharing technological advances that can help them do their work better. It's architects, engineers, energy consultants, some developers, public policy people. I don't think we have any code folks, but and we've also been engaged with working with the state in terms of the tax credits and other things, providing QAP input sort of on behalf of the group and the interest areas of the group in improving the availability and sustainability of affordable multifamily. I don't know if Kathy's still on, if she wants to add anything to that as a participant. I see you there, Kathy, if you want to just unmute.
Yeah. So I would just first of all say, yeah, I agree with that. I think we're a group of people vitally interested in solving climate issues and making a real difference. And so we're real excited about this partnership. I'd also just wanted to mention that I heard from the commissioner, she really wanted to be here today, but she had to be out of the office today and couldn't join us, but expressed her appreciation of this continuing conversation.
Yeah, and we'll so you're all talking to the commissioner, so we'll send a link to her when we're done here, to the recorded version. So all right, thanks, Kathy.
Of course.
Is that my cue to jump in here?
It is, Connell.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for having me. I've been looking forward to this call. My name is Connell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Enertiv. It's a company that I've been building passionately for the last 14 years, and we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Drew, just real quick, do we have until 11:15 on the presentation, or how much time would you like me to save for Q&A?
I would say take like 15 minutes to present, and then maybe give like 10 minutes or so for Q&A.
Perfect, thank you. So Enertiv actually started out as a hardware manufacturing business with the goal of bringing unprecedented transparency to real-time equipment level energy usage in commercial real estate assets. Over the years, we've since expanded, and today we have a operational intelligence platform. It's a connected software application that basically integrates with the building infrastructure, equipment, and systems, and ties real-time data into the most critical operational workflows to help operators and portfolio investors and owners reduce energy spend, operate more efficiently, to help increase NOI and the asset value while decarbonizing the asset. I'll jump into some more detail on the company shortly, but two things I wanted to call out, just given the audience, is one, Enertiv was just awarded our first major contract with the City of New York, specifically the EDC, the Economic Development Corp, to deploy our technology at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, a 4 million square foot asset. So we're really excited about that, and we understand that having a contract with the City of New York may make it a little bit easier to contract with other cities and states, perhaps Connecticut in the future. We also have been working directly with New York City's Housing Authority, which is their public housing portfolio, for some time now, on a very specific project that looks at exhaust fan uptime in some of their aging multifamily high rises. And the reason that this data is critical to NYCHA is they were having severe indoor air quality challenges. So we deployed indoor air quality sensors to look at particulates per million ppm and ensure that the exhaust fans were spinning, circulating the air. And with this pilot project, we were able to reduce downtime of the exhaust fans from what was once, over a month on average to less than a week, ensuring high quality air in the tenant and occupant spaces. So I'll dig in a little bit more here. So a lot of the issues in commercial real estate that our business is trying to solve stem from a fundamental lack of transparency into how an asset is performing. And this is the result of a number of compounding issues. One is typically, with the end users that are using our applications, who are property teams, the chief engineers, assistant engineers, property managers, that are being asked to use 6 or 7 different software tools to run an asset. And given that today's average operator is 55 years old or older, that's a big ask when it comes to maintaining an asset. And then this problem, in most cases only gets worse at the portfolio scale. So you might have 4 or 5 different software applications in an asset, helping with maintenance and capital planning and ESG reporting and tenant billing. And as a result of having so many unique software point solution, executive level portfolio operators typically have very little transparency into what's happening at the asset level. And so this is one of the key problems that we're trying to solve as a business. Just to take a step back, Enertiv today is deployed across approximately 400 commercial real estate assets. We have a significant business in the multifamily housing space across high-rise, mid-rise, and even garden-style communities. But we also do a tremendous amount of business in commercial offices, data centers, industrial warehouses, and logistics facilities. And most recently, we've been contracting with a number of open-air strip malls. There's a lot of interest from publicly traded REITs and publicly traded companies, given the upcoming climate disclosure rule, where these companies are going to have to start reporting on their energy usage and their decarbonization targets and how they're performing against those targets. But I'll get back to the script here. The challenge with having a lack of transparency into asset level operations, it was manageable in years past, but the real estate market has changed, and this is creating significant problems for ownership. There's a major labor shortage in the market. It's getting more and more challenging to backfill the engineers who have run properties for the last 20 or 30 years. We're not in a market where it's easy to increase rents, so there's a much greater focus on operational efficiency and reducing operating expenses as a way to increase NOI and not relying so heavily on increasing rents. And there's just a lot more pressure from investors and tenants to see more efficient operations and see their landlords and capital partners adopting technologies to position them well for the future. This is a number of the clients that we work with across North America. You can see there's quite a mix between different property types, and that most of the major property managers across North America are using our applications. The benefit here is that we have tailored our solutions to what the customers need. And we work very closely to develop not only our workflow tools, but also our real-time data insights that focus on uncovering opportunities to reduce operating expenses and make the right capital expenses. And we've developed these insights with some of the best players in the market. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit more about the platform itself and how it works. every asset or building that we bring onto our software platform goes through a digitization process. A digitization process can mean a lot of different things depending on who you're talking to. So I'll explain ours. We have a national network of surveyors who use our Enertiv survey mobile app, which is featured on the left side of the screen. And they'll spend a day or two on site taking pictures of all of the utility meters, the tenant submeters, as well as the critical equipment systems. So that would include your elevators, the pumps in the buildings, the boiler, the chiller if there is one, the cooling tower, the exhaust fans. So we're capturing images of the equipment itself and the meters. We're also taking pictures of the nameplates, and we use computer vision to extract all of the equipment specs and pull that back into our software. We upload all the relevant documentation for each piece of equipment, whether that's an operations and maintenance manual or a service agreement or the equipment warranty or even the critical parts list or vendor contact list. And then we put a QR code on each system so that our engineers in the property can access this information on the fly. You wouldn't believe the stories that we hear talking with chief engineers, but sometimes they'll spend hours, if not days, trying to track down a file or figure out, sometimes it can take days from asset manager to even figure out what equipment is in the asset. So with Enertiv, everything is digitized, and this yields a robust equipment and meter inventory for the asset. Then we have 4 core software products. Some of our customers adopt the platform end to end and have all of their critical operational workflows running on Enertiv. Others will pick 1 or 2 modules to start and then typically gradually adopt more as time goes on. So as you can see here, the 4 software tools include a maintenance product, and this facilitates everything from tenant ticketing to work order management to driving the daily preventative maintenance inspections and rounds. The next module is our next product, we call them software modules, is our energy and ESG product. And this is automating the utility disclosure process into software and certification houses such as Energy Star Manager and GRESB. So we have the ability to automate the collection of utility bills directly from the utility, pull that data into our platform, and then push the billing data, whether it's electric, water, gas, or steam, directly into Energy Star Portfolio Manager for benchmarking. And that gives the customer a baseline of where their assets stand across the portfolio. If their scores on Energy Star are above a 75, they can hire a professional engineer and get the asset certified. If they're not, it opens up the conversation around what are the operational and capital improvements we can make to the asset to increase our scores. And I was on a call with one of our customers just yesterday, Aspen Properties up in Canada. We actually took one of their scores from 62 to 89 in Energy Star just over the last year. So we were pleased to see that result. Our next software product is a tenant billing solution. This is less relevant to multifamily, but very relevant in other property types. We automate the monthly tenant submetering process to bill the tenants back for their consumption. It typically takes us 1 to 2 days to generate the invoice from receiving the utility bill. And we often find opportunities to increase revenue recovery by anywhere between 20 to 40% with this product. And then the last software product is our capital planning product. Talking to a lot of our customers, we learned that capital planning and budgeting is a very tedious process annually. So what we do is we ingest the property conditions assessments. We combine that data with our equipment inventories. And for every piece of equipment in an asset, Enertiv is forecasting its end of useful life. we capture the replacement cost, and then we're recommending more efficient equipment upgrades or replacements, and including local rebates to the extent that those are available. So instead of doing this across 4 different products, now operators can run all these critical workflows on Enertiv. So the fact that it's such a comprehensive piece of software really differentiates us in market. What our secret sauce really is as a business is incorporating real-time building data into each of these workflows to make them more powerful, but also drive towards decarbonized and net zero assets. So Enertiv can integrate with just about any building management system. That allows us to run our AI algorithms across thousands of points in a building to help optimize operations. We can also monitor equipment directly, and this is incorporated in 75% or more of our projects, but we install multi-point branch circuit metering devices on the electrical infrastructure. And so we're basically putting sensors around each circuit that's powering the equipment, so we know in real time how much a piece of equipment costs to operate, how much energy it's consuming, its GHG emissions, and its runtime hours per day. This data also allows us to predict equipment failures and to detect them in real time, which operators on site are notified about through our mobile application. On the environmental monitoring side, we integrate data from sensors that look at indoor air quality, occupancy, temperatures, which can help with freeze protection and comfort. And we also look at moisture for leak detection. And Enertiv is an entirely open platform. We have an open API, so if our customers need to have this data available in third-party software applications, they can do so, which is unique in our space, where legacy providers have really been selling closed applications into market. Ours is entirely open. Once this real-time data is coming in, we have the ability to automatically identify energy savings and cost-saving insights, both on the operational and capital side. And so what makes our value prop very unique in market is, in many cases, the energy savings that we're identifying in an asset is covering the cost of all the necessary workflow tools. There's really no other player in market that can do this. And it's not just software. Each asset has a dedicated client success engineering manager who works very closely with them to implement the automated insights that we identify to deliver savings. And we're very, very hands-on. Some of the sort of bigger picture items that we're helping with is, reducing carbon emissions, which I know this group is passionate about, particularly CI, creating more alignment across the organization. We're really, for the first time, providing radical transparency into real-time building operations and where there's areas for improvement to executive operators. Each of our software products is scoring the property team 0 to 100 based on the quality of the work that's happening. I've talked about how it's an open system. So I know I'm tight on time here. I'm going to spend another minute on case studies real quickly. This was a project that started a couple of years ago with Starwood Capital. We started out at a 10-property office asset in Florida. We then deployed Enertiv across their entire 17 million square foot office portfolio. And today we're in the process of contracting their entire industrial portfolio. But one of the couple of the really great outcomes of this project was we've reduced their annual OpEx by $1.2 million across the portfolio. And they've been able to save a lot of costs by consolidating 53 unique software point solutions onto Enertiv across the office portfolio. Another case study was with the Brandywine Realty Trust. We started with a two building pilot on our tenant billing product. Today, we've been deployed across their entire 8 million square foot portfolio. And as a result of this, they've been able to consolidate 6 legacy tenant billing providers. Most of the reads were being done manually on clipboards, and we've increased revenue by $1 million just by looking carefully at the utility bill tariff and the tenant leases. And this is probably the most relevant. We have now been deployed across Related California's entire entire multifamily portfolio, both on the luxury side and the affordable housing side. So it started out with a 3-property initial deployment. They are using our maintenance module to stay on top of preventative maintenance rounds and inspections. They were having a lot of equipment failures. They were spending a ton of money on reactive maintenance. All of this is now proactive. And as a result, we've avoided $80,000 in repairs. 95% of the faults detected in our platform have been resolved, and they're solving these problems in less than 24 hours. Now they have real-time data and visibility into what's happening. So I'll stop there and I'll open things up for questions. Thanks for the time and the opportunity today.
Thanks, Cornell. You can hear me, right? I
Yes,
successfully unmuted myself.
Gotcha, Dean. Gotcha.
Okay, so if you have questions from the audience, if you raise your hands, I've got a couple to start off with, and then we can maybe throw it open a little bit more. But a couple of things about is there a minimum size project below which it doesn't necessarily pencil? It looks like these are portfolio scale connections to large developers. I mean, is there some, in terms of all the work that you do for a building or for a suite of buildings, is there some size that just doesn't work right now and you need to make it bigger than that in order for it to pencil out?
Yeah, it's a great question. We get it all the time. I would respond in saying that there's no single building where Enertiv cannot provide a tremendous amount of value. And the different software products that we're going to recommend for that asset are going to focus on where there's the most pain, and in keeping the project as simple and as streamlined as possible to reach our success criteria and then expand. Now, during our sales qualification process, we're typically looking for portfolios of at least 20 or more buildings, so that when we deliver a home run at a single asset or a handful of assets, we have a clear path to what an expansion can look like. So that's sort of a short way of saying, we can bring value to any asset. There's no building that's too small or too old to benefit from certain or all products on the platform. But we do like to see a certain size portfolio, just so that when we do dedicate our limited resources to deliver value, we know there's an opportunity to grow that relationship over time.
Terrific. Okay. Again, if people in the crowd raise your hands or just jump in, because I do have a couple more. In terms of the projects you showed, Reliant and Brandywine and some of the others, is it like a subscription-based service that you're providing on an annual basis with the support back at the office, and then the install of the sensors and the monitoring the data?
Yeah.
And
so
how does that relate to the operators in the building?
Yeah. So typically we're selling the solution to the senior asset managers or the heads of sustainability and ESG and innovation or engineering in a portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Our most common business model is selling a one-time setup cost, one-time hardware fee if we are integrating with the building's equipment to get real-time data into the platform. And then we sign 3-year contracts with an annual recurring software subscription. So in the multifamily space, we charge a dollar amount per unit per year. And outside of multifamily and hospitality, we charge pennies per square foot per year for each of our software products.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, and keeps you close to them, which is a
good
thing.
It keeps us close. We have quarterly business reviews. We're providing a ton of ad hoc support and training to the on-site team. in most cases, we're delivering a sub 12-month payback period, just on the hard energy savings alone. And I think it says a lot. Our current logo retention rate is over 95%, and we're seeing most of our customers expand on the platform today, given the preliminary value that we're delivering.
Great. Okay. So Steve is on, and then I don't know, Chuck, if you have a question, and then Kathy. But Steve? Why don't you go first? Steve Hall.
Yeah, it's a simple question, which I think I know your answer, but I'm working with a type of system where we would be sub-metering on the basis of BTUs. And that wouldn't be any problem for you, I think, to track that.
No, so if we're coming into a building, like our focus is not selling hardware. Hardware is a means to an end for us. So we just want to get the data into the platform. So if there's an existing tenant sub-metering infrastructure, if there's an existing building management system, we're going to tie into those existing systems to pull the data in. So on that BTU sub-metering infrastructure that you've just described, we can pull that data into Enertiv and run the monthly bill back process, and also push that data into Energy Star to meet the tenant Energy Star requirement, if that's of interest to the end customer. So there's a lot we can do once we get that data flowing.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Chuck, Chuck Emerson, did you have a question?
Maybe I missed it, but cost for the service, and how does that, what's the impact on the property owners?
Sure. Cost varies greatly. I can give you sort of average price points. For example, the related case study that I showed you, where they're on our maintenance module and we're monitoring critical equipment like boilers and elevators, they're also on our capital planning module. They're spending around $45 per unit per year across their portfolios. That'd be a decent multifamily price comp for you. Sorry, does that answer your question, or did I miss the second part?
Yes, no, I think that's that answers the question.
But we have a solutions engineering process where we'll have an open conversation around the needs and the pain points, and then we will put forth a custom recommendation that in most cases will not incorporate all of our products. It will incorporate one or two module to get to the heart of the need. So if Steve had a sub-metering need, we'd really only be talking about our tenant billing product, which would be a lot lower from a cost perspective than if Steve were to adopt all 4 modules to run an asset on.
So Kathy?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, all this information seems really cool. It seems like, a great thing to do. And then, I kind of stand back and go, so who do I make the argument to do this, and how is that argument formatted? And, I think there's things that you're doing that overlap with like WeGoWise and Bright Power and other platforms and things that we use. What would you first tell me is like how you would format the argument to a client, for me, about adopting this? And then thinking on that, is there a reason for policy? We're here talking about the state of Connecticut and how to do it. WeGoWise did do a statewide benchmarking program for affordable housing in Massachusetts, which was just so useful and so interesting. What should we be thinking about that? If so, how? Just, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. And you've set me up very nicely here. So WeGoWise and Bright Power basically launched these solutions about 7 years ago. I know both of the founders, mostly around the local law 84 requirement in New York for benchmarking of assets. And it's since expanded to other states. Benchmarking is the first step, and that's why we launched our energy and ESG module that benchmarks assets. And we'll often give that product away. So there can be immediate savings just to move off of a WeGoWise or, Bright Power via any number of solutions that do the same exact thing and onto Enertiv. Where we really shine, and this is when a lot of customers approach Enertiv on their own, is answering the next question, which is, you've benchmarked all of your assets, and some have scores in the high 90s, but then some have scores in the low 50s, right? And so the question is, what do we do now to optimize energy usage, or EUI? And there's really two ways to do that, which we drive on our platform. It's identifying operational efficiencies, which are low and no cost, which we're able to deliver by looking at how the building is performing and how the building systems are running. And then there's making the right capital investments. And so in Enertiv, in our capital planning module, you can look at your capital investments through the lens of, when is the end of useful life for this boiler? And we might tell you got another 25 years on this thing, but we might also tell you that is the biggest energy hog in the building. And that if you want to look at decarbonization and reducing your EUI, you should replace this immediately with a more efficient piece of equipment. So that's where we really, really help. And we can quantify the impact of any operational change or capital investment, equipment upgrade, equipment replacement that's made, because there's built-in measurement and verification within the software.
What a great answer. And so, but it brings up another question. So the biggest issue that we face when we're trying to compare, options for properties, particularly big properties with complex needs, is the cost of improvements, right? So, it's relatively straightforward to understand useful life and operating efficiencies or whatever, but that initial capital cost is hard to come by, and particularly if you're trying to look at a property and compare 10 different strategies. Are we going to what are we going to use? Can you talk a little bit about that and what you can and can't provide to answer that?
Well, certainly. The benefit of working with a company like Enertiv that has been heads down building this product for almost 15 years is the platform now sits on top of 30 plus billion hours of real-time equipment level performance data. And that's, we're also capturing the nameplate information. So we have a lot of visibility into, how systems operate across North America, which can help with some of those decisions. Now, there's always going to be a new technology out in market that we haven't monitored on the platform, but usually what our customers are doing is they'll start small. We'll help them with a basic payback analysis of an equipment upgrade. They'll deploy it if it pencils out or looks like it nearly pencils out, and then we can get the real-time equipment data from the live install to validate that decision and then determine whether or not it should be part of the strategy portfolio-wide.
And can you address specifically the capital cost that goes into that analysis?
The analysis is going to be built into, covered under Enertiv's annual software subscription, which includes...
No, the capital cost of the improvement. So I understand, the performance data, et cetera, but, I'm going to put in new hot water boilers, or I'm going to put in new heat pumps, or I'm going to put in ground source heat pumps, and I'm trying to compare those. I need capital costs for those improvements. How is that?
Yeah, so we would support the bidding process and help you get the capital costs, and also can look across capital costs and projects that other customers have done anonymously on the platform. So I don't have a perfect answer for you. This is the hard work that needs to happen, but we are, pushing out new features around capital planning to decarbonize on a bi-weekly basis. And I'd love to get your thoughts there on how we can make it even better.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, well, I have a few more, but I think we're going to take a pause now and move on to AmpUp. Drew or David, do you want to introduce the next presentation?
Sure. Yeah, I think Matt Bloom is here from AmpUp. Connell, thanks for the presentation. That was fantastic. So Matt is the head of partnerships at AmpUp, our EV charging software company, and he can get into it more, but AmpUp has just done an amazing job of working with Connecticut hardware partners and others in the ecosystem to really build out the EV charging, value chain here in the state. So, Matt, I'll turn it over to you and give the full presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Thanks, Dean. And thanks everyone for the time today. Really excited to present and tell you more about us. So like Drew said, my name is Matt. I'm the director of partnerships here at AmpUp. I'm located in Boston, but I'm in Connecticut quite often since we have an office space there. I went to school down there, so very familiar with the state. So at a high level, AmpUp is an electric vehicle charging provider. There's a lot that goes into an EV charging project, but think of us as kind of the Windows on the PCs, right, or the software that comes with the charging stations out in the market. So what we're really good at is giving the station owner, which could be a multi-unit dwelling, a hotel, right, a municipality, the tools they need to manage those charging stations after they're installed. So think of your average multi-unit dwelling. They might have 4 or 5 EV drivers now, right, for say 100 unit space. And they need a way to collect revenue, set a price to collect that revenue, cash that out into their account. They might want to see analytics, right, manage who has access and when. So that's what our system does via essentially a software portal that customer has access to. Like Drew mentioned, we have several manufacturers that we partner with in the state. We actually have over 15 that we partner with in total now. So again, that's sort of our software running on those manufacturers' charging stations that they're selling out in the market. And then we also have an accompanying mobile app that a lot of the EV drivers use to actually authenticate and pay, for their charging sessions. So they can find chargers on our app, they can monitor those sessions, add their credit card, right? So really an easy way to kind of, tap and charge with an RFID card or using your app. And then, how big are we, right? So we're about 50 people. We've been doing this for about 5 years. We've grown to over 1,000 customers across the United States and Canada. And we have currently over 4,000 private, commercial, and public chargers in that region. So, what chargers are available to our customers? It's typically level 2 charging stations and DC fast stations. For those who don't know, the level 1 station, which is not on this screen, think of that as sort of your 120 regular electrical outlet. Takes a very long time for someone to charge using one of those cables. They often come with some of the electric vehicles that are sold, and it could take anywhere from 20, even 30 hours to charge your vehicle from 0 or 20% all the way to full, using that sort of trickle charge methodology. Where we focus on is level 2 and fast charging, and this is typically serving where people work and where they live, as well as that fleet segment as a growing sector for us. And so with the level 2 charger, this is where we see a lot of multi-unit dwellings adopt as a solution for them. They have pretty reliable overnight parking from their tenants, which could be 5 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours while those cars are idle. So it's a great solution to charge up a car in somewhere between 4 or 8 hours, depending on that car's battery, as they're sitting there overnight. And then the average cost we see in the market, per a dual port charge station, is typically around $5,000. And I think similar to the last discussion I was hearing, a lot of the project cost is actually the infrastructure upgrade and that electrical upgrade, and not so much the actual charge station or AmpUp service. And then DC fast, just to note, put a note on this. Not something I see as widely adopted in the multi-unit dwelling space, or in general. This is really the like for like gas station model that you might see or hear about when with a lot of government funding for public charging stations, high powered stations that can charge a car in 20 minutes, 40 minutes, really quick, in and out transaction. And I know Connecticut has a good share of these, mostly Teslas alongside, Route 84 and down 95, but a lot more coming. The reason the fast charger typically doesn't fit most use cases is because they're a lot more expensive and they require a lot more power. So in general, those projects are well over $200,000 and require a lot of utility work as well to get off the ground. So the AmpUp charging management system, our goal is really to make it easy for the average EV charging station owner to manage their stations. We understand, the person who's been tasked with managing these stations is not only an electric vehicle driver themselves. We also realize they may be managing a lot of different energy devices in that property. So the typical profile is a property manager, a facility manager, and they might have some sort of sustainability, know-how or eager to jump in here. But we also realize there's a good portion of the market we need to bring along with us, and we think we're doing that by offering a really easy to use system. A lot of solutions before us, I like to say, they were built by engineers for engineers, and we're a group of engineers who are building for the average individual, and we understand it's got to be kind of point and click software and not too in the weeds on anything that would confuse people. So the features we like to elevate for customers is one, have just really easy insights into how the chargers are performing for you, right? How many vehicles are charging there on a daily basis? How much revenue is collected? Is that something that's paying back your electricity bill on an ongoing basis? Maybe you're earning profit actually because you're getting back the electricity price and then some. We also have CO2 and sustainability metrics that you can sort of download, via PDF report. So a lot of different, options here. Most people are going with something pretty simple and out of the box. We do have a solution more tailor-made for utilities and fleets that's more advanced. But again, the goal is to have this as like a comfortable, easy experience for the average charging station owner, knowing it's a very new concept to them, and we don't want to scare them away, right? As I said before, there's an AmpUp mobile app that I think's really helpful for the EV drivers as part of that community. So we do have quite a few multi-unit dwellings as customers, and what we typically see is the tenants of those buildings will use the AmpUp mobile app to scan a QR code to start their charging session, or they'll use an RFID card that they keep like on their keychain to tap on the front of the electric vehicle charger to authenticate the session. Again, the goal here is make it really easy for people to charge and pay, see things like their past charging history, and then if they so wish, find other chargers on our network that might be publicly available if they're leaving that property. So as I said before, we have quite a few different charging partners. Some of the big names are right here on this page. I think most interesting maybe to this group is we do have a lot of partners in the state of Connecticut. And it actually represents most of the market share that we have on our network. So Legrand being a very large employer in Connecticut, they're one of our biggest and newest partners. We have Juice Bar, as well as EVSC LLC. And all these partners are a little different on how they go to market, which might be worth noting. Our goal is to have the AmpUp system kind of look and feel the same for anyone who gets it, regardless of what charging station they may purchase and install. But these partners differ in how they go to market, in that, Legrand is a very large electrical manufacturer. They go through electrical distribution, where a Juice Bar actually does a lot of direct sales and has a sales team that's dialing for dollars to local Connecticut properties. This is the sort of the NASCAR slide of a lot of different logos of customers who use us. So it really is, anyone typically getting their first 4 or 6 charging stations as they dip their toe in the water to kind of, go electric for their site and entice customers, to use those stations and potentially have them shop at their location by offering EV charging. but potentially entice, tenants and new renters as well. We've seen that, sort of on the, I'd say on the higher end of more luxury apartments are a little more quick to adopt if the tenants, have electric vehicles, Teslas, could be Porsches or other things. But we truly serve a lot of different, client bases, right? From property groups, fleets, hotel chains, public locations, you name it. And before the call, I was just looking at a list of some of the locations we have in Connecticut. Laz Parking in downtown Hartford, the town of Norwalk, the Yale New Haven Hospital, the Connecticut Green Bank, actually, who we also work with on carbon credits. So quite a growing footprint in Connecticut. And so, on that, we have over 500 stations in the state today. It's actually one of our, our largest states where we have stations deployed, mainly in a large part thanks to the, partners we have in the state already. In the last year, we've seen a 3x annual growth of the chargers in the state alone. So I think that's a signal to us that Connecticut is actually in the forefront of EV adoption in general, and then certainly the adoption of charging stations to serve those EVs. I think, if I look at the Northeast, Massachusetts and Connecticut are pretty close, 1 and 2. New York's doing their part as well. And then on, the other states we have are obviously California, Washington, Oregon, or some of the other, hot states. But it seems to be that the Northeast as well as the West Coast is where we're seeing the most EV adoption. And we're super excited to have a lot of adoption in Connecticut specifically. We've been engaging with the utilities quite a lot in the last couple months. They're very interested in the amount of energy that is going through our network on a daily basis, and seeing if there's a way we could, kind of work with them on that for a new, energy efficiency or demand response program in the future. I do want to note, Eversource and UI as well are currently going through a vendor approval process, right, for their own EV charging incentives that the state, that the regulator approved earlier this year, and now they're gearing up to launch that in the future. That's a really important program that's going to be impactful to AmpUp, but just the EV space in general in Connecticut, because we've seen those programs launching in Massachusetts and New York really be, I'll say, like a Kickstarter to getting customers to say yes and start, purchasing and installing charge stations when they otherwise might have not. And what's nice about those programs is the utility is typically covering a lot of those make-ready infrastructure costs that I mentioned earlier. That can sometimes be the bulk of the overall project cost. Having that in there as an incentive is helping a lot of customers, I think, look at the project differently now that there's a big discount attached to it. And then last on this slide, just wanted to note, we are opening up a lab of our own in the Hartford area. Drew from Connecticut Innovations and the entire team have been super helpful. And our journey of, finding office space, getting connected to, potential, customers, getting us in front of audiences like this to learn more of how we can serve the state of Connecticut. So it's been a really good, relationship to date. But also, I think it's going to help us grow our team in Connecticut in that lab space we're opening. And it's something we want to show off to, it could be a purchasing group in Connecticut at the state level. It could be a fleet. It could be an investor. We want to bring them to that lab and say, this is where innovation's happening for AmpUp right here in Hartford. And then just quickly want to touch on a couple project case studies of some of the customers we're serving. So Domino's Pizza, you might have seen these ads on like Sundays, while you're watching football. Their whole fleet is going electric. And surprising to us, we won some of these jobs in areas I didn't think EV would be adopted quickly. Indiana, Louisiana, Alabama, Missouri, right? So we've got over 50 charge stations at many different Domino's locations, and more coming, which is really exciting. We actually got one deployed in Wyoming, believe it or not, a couple of weeks ago. So to me, that tells me the wave is coming for EVs, even if not as fast as we like it, quite yet. Under Armour's headquarters is another one. they've got 36 AmpUp charging stations with Juice Bar that they're using for employees to use during the day. But they also share that with a track and field complex they've built out at their headquarters at sort of those off-peak hours. So that's kind of an ideal customer for us when we see corporates kind of lead to show people that they're sustainable, but also property groups like a CBRE, right, or a local multi-unit dwelling. Kind of think seeing is believing in the EV space, and once people see chargers at more locations, that'll help them adopt electric vehicles themselves. That's really all I had. I didn't want to go too far. I did want to dig into the weeds on any questions people have, and sort of see where else I could support.
Terrific. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, great. This is an optimistic end of the week on both of these presentations. Looking forward to better times ahead. I'm hoping. Anybody has any questions? I do have a couple, Matt, for you. I just want to get a clarification. The management function that you provide for managing 36 EV stations, for whichever company, is that or are you also providing the chargers, or are you just managing chargers that have been installed by somebody else or another manufacturer, or both?
Yeah, no, great question. We get that a lot. So we only provide the software and the management system. That being said, we're happy to hold that customer's hand through that buying process, to put them in touch with an electrician who could come out to the site and see, where should these chargers go, how much room is in your panel to put these chargers in, and then also connect them with one of our hardware partners to say, hey, this is the solution we think that's right for you, right?
Gotcha. And so in that case, then because I was thinking, who are your customers? Your customers. And so to a certain extent, a customer is the manufacturer of systems that could be pre-configured for your software. Is that correct? Do they need to be pre-configured, or?
Yeah. Most are pre-configured. That's sort of our go-to-market. That's worked well for us. And I think it's easier for the customer if they don't have to figure out, I got a station now, I don't have software. What do I do now, right? So that's been a better buying experience. But you're right, Dean. I think the customer for us, at the end of the day, it is that property manager who owns the stations, because they're managing the tenants who are using them, and they might be getting questions from the tenants about the EV chargers. But the hardware partners, and then even the electricians who are kind of quoting these out in the market and helping doing the jobs, those are like equal customers in my eyes, because they're really trusted parties by those property groups.
And so if you have in the case of Domino's, one of your case studies, did you come in and offer the management software capability after they had already made the decision to buy the EV and install the EV stations, or did you help them make that decision?
We helped them make that decision. Yeah, we had a contractor who said, I have a large Domino's franchise. They want to do this. What do you recommend we use for hardware and software? So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's other questions out there from the audience, just unmute and jump in. But then further to that, so like Legrand, is Legrand in the EV charger station manufacturing business now? I did some work. Okay, so they're a manufacturer side. So you're coming to market sort of together and sort of separately, and cross selling. So in terms of this is a question I also might ask about Enertiv. At the end of the day, let's say you have 100 Domino's, my voice to God's ear, have as many as you can get, 1,000. And they're all being centralized through your management software, and they're being optimized, and reporting is coming out and all that. The data that you're collecting is coming from the EV charger, right? Not from the meter inside the Domino's. The charger itself is reporting the data that you're using. Okay. So at the end of the day, the same question for Enertiv: who owns the data? I mean, I would think it's a touchy question. Does Domino's own it? Do you own it? Do you share it? Are you licensed to have it for a certain period of time? How does that work?
Yeah. So AmpUp owns the data, and then through that, license subscription agreement we have with Domino's, we're sharing it with them. So, in my eyes, they own it as much as we do. It is their stations that they purchased. I think another interesting thing is the utilities are very eager to have the data because they want to see data from the charging stations as if it was an electric meter. So they require 15-minute interval reporting, a lot of different details in there of what's going on, how much was the charging session, and that's helping them hopefully plan for utility upgrades in the future, right, in specific territories.
And that's shareable per an agreement with, say, Domino's or somebody else, if you can share that with the utility?
Correct. Yeah. The way a lot of the incentives work, including the one that's being launched in Connecticut currently, essentially, let's say there's a Domino's in Hartford. If Domino's wants the utility incentive, they need to share the data that comes from that station back to the utility. So we do that on their behalf. It's a win-win in our eyes.
Yeah, because it's one of the things I wanted to ask Enertiv about, it could be something that the utilities would be looking at with you too, is it's not just the use of energy, it's the cost of energy. Like, when is it being used? And I guess eventually it's going to be, when is it being given back as a battery from the, back into the system? Yeah, David.
I have just a comment here, Dean, that for those of you on the call, so referencing back that Yukon conference, one of the things the governor said on the stage is, look, I've mandated all vehicles sold in the state by 2035 will be electric. So the wave is definitely coming. So this is no longer theoretical. This is very much like, we got to go install. So we're talking with real estate construction about it. Matt's team is in review with them because they're doing the massive programs across the state buildings. That includes what DOT is doing with NEVI and the infrastructure along the main corridors. And then we get down into big patches of land like corrections, higher education facilities, multifamily units, places where the state can make influence quickly and also share the revenue. So I think it's go time on this one for sure. So if you have projects that look like this could be spec'd in, please let us know. We're very willing to support it.
Yeah, be interesting. I mean, one of the things I was going to ask about on the install side of the units is, I think you said $5,000, but that also rolled in infrastructure improvements to handle the units, right? To be able to place.
Yeah, the stations alone with the software could come out to $2,000 per station, or like $5,000 for a dual port station. The infrastructure, though, truly differs by location. Where is the panel in relation to the parking space, and do you need a panel upgrade, trenching, concrete pouring, all the rest? But I will say there's the incentive dollars from the utilities could really be helpful there. And there are other federal grants and other things people are pursuing to help offset that cost.
Yeah, I was thinking of it more as a data collection thing, so that as you move into this, where have the installs been, and what were the infrastructure costs, so that you can maybe see, is there a preferred infrastructure situation to start with?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're gonna laugh.
Yeah.
You're gonna laugh, Dean. If I drive by, any location, and I see like an electric panel right next to 2 parking spots, I'm like, they don't know how good they have it, right?
Yeah,
like,
really.
That is the cheapest installation for electric vehicle charging stations. The customer might not know that or not be ready to make that purchase yet. But that's kind of what I look for when I'm driving around. The cost for the infrastructure does vary by location and the different requirements, but in general, I've used a $10,000 per station kind of estimate, just to say, all in, what does it take to get 4 charging stations in that lot? Somewhere around 40,000 typically. I think the more stations you get on one panel, it's not going to be $10,000 for every additional charger, right? But most people are getting their first 2 or 4 chargers. They're just feeling it out. And the make ready work, that infrastructure work, is in the 20,000 to 40,000 range typically.
And the cost is I guess scalable. The cost to use it, the cost per kilowatt hour, whatever it is that's scalable too, I guess, in terms of the utility and when it's used and everything else, and then how it's recovered. So,
right, and we give the customer the ability to set that price, whatever price they'd like. Some like free amenity charging for their tenants. Others are saying, hey, this is really an ROI, opportunity. That's how I look at it. I know there'll be high usage, right? So that's how we'll do it. We'll charge the electric rate or maybe even above it to earn back more money.
Terrific. Okay. Well, I see some people. Kathy, did you have something, or were you just? say more?
Yeah, so first of all, terrific. Can you talk, I'm a little familiar with capital costs, having looked at it at different projects, and, always make, the cheapest time to run wires is when you're doing the initial work. But can you talk about your fee structure for operating? Because one of the challenges we're really finding is that, yeah, by 3035, all the cars will be electric, but particularly in the affordable housing space where I work, very few are currently. And the pricing structures we've looked at have like an annual base fee for operating the charging station that it's unlikely will achieve the use of in a short period of time. So can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So on average, a property owner is purchasing our subscription fee at $250 per station per year. That comes out to about $1.50 per day. So, if there is an electric vehicle that's kind of reliably charging, or a bunch of them on a daily basis, they will very quickly cover their cost of AmpUp, on a weekly or monthly basis, if not the entire year. But to be honest with you, I think there's other locations we've seen where they might have 10 chargers, but only 4 are used per day. And so, they're kind of right at that break even line, and it's a little more difficult. But I think the goal they've kind of set in their mind is, if we build it, they'll come. And so they might only have 4 today, but that might entice, 1 or 2 more people to get an EV or find that charger in the future. And so they'll be ready and won't have to do 6 months, 12 months of infrastructure work and, utility planning. They'll have chargers ready to go.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And while I've got the floor, I'll ask this follow-up question. So in housing where people stay, it's not like a grocery store, you pull in, you charge, you leave, and you open up the space for another person, in housing where people go in and they park at a station or they don't, and they're probably going to be there all night, right? They're not going to get up at 2 a.m. when they're charged and open it up. One of, the issues is, of course, fair housing, because you want to make those accessible in your accessible parking spaces, but you don't want to do that entirely. Any insights or thoughts about that?
Yeah. Is the question like how to share the chargers, or how to avoid those charging for too long and not?
Well, I don't think you can, because I don't think, somebody comes home from work, they're going to park at a station or not. I don't think in housing, as opposed to another kind of use, you can do that. I'm just talking about how you locate them given that reality.
Got it. Yeah. I think from what we see is multi-unit dwellings for me are more unique than some of the other, clients we have, mainly because deeded spaces is sometimes something the HOA is thinking about, how we're going to solve for that. I have seen a lot of them, just take a bank of chargers and put them in those public spaces. So they might say, let's put 4 chargers in the more general parking area. People can use them and share them as they need. And then, they do have the ability through our software to set things like a penalty, or, for staying too long. And I agree, Kathy, like if it's overnight, it might not be the right thing to give them a penalty, but even if they're just home from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., 4 hour, I drive an electric vehicle. If I got 4 hours of a level 2 charger, I'm set. And I think that's kind of just it's a habit that will change for people. We're not going to have, go to the EV charge station, fill up for 5 minutes and leave. It's more of top off as you go. And that's just kind of a culture change that I think everyone will experience in the next, decade or two as they adopt EVs. There won't be so much kind of like fear of, running out of battery, right? It's called range anxiety is what people call it. But I don't have range anxiety, right? Like I have chargers where I work, I top off when I'm there, might move the vehicle at lunch, right? And share it with others. So that's what we're seeing in the space currently.
I just wanted to add one thing here as a non-layman. So as architects or engineers, the thing we hear from other state agencies we talk to is like, we're still assessing whether there's enough amps in the box and enough space for more breakers. Like this is the basic blocking and tackling that you can already do in advance. And then is there conduit running involved? Do you have to bore? Do you have to dig? This kind of stuff you can already, as the building, knowing the property itself. And then the other thing you could do is to run a quick survey with the developer, to survey the people, the tenants, and say, are, you know, intent to buy an EV, work access to chargers. Because when the state buildings go, say you had a lot of state employees working in a building, those employees will have access. Whereas guys of electric boat, funnily enough, might not. So it really depends on the location, and you could actually pre-survey that to get a sense of, you know, how much demand is in the building. Just, you know, constructive thoughts.
Good points. And going back to the fee, is that $250 a year for a dual station?
No, per port.
So it's
for a single
500 per
station.
port.
500 for a dual port. Yep.
And the maintenance issues with that is with your partners, right? In terms of maintaining the things that the people that have actually sold the EVs. And in terms of the management, do you get early warnings when things are failing? And it also, can you, in terms of the penalty, is that a money penalty, or can you shut them off with the software?
Yeah, so no, all good question. So we are the first line of support. It's sort of our 1-800 number, you know, on the station, as well as in our software for people to call us if they do encounter an issue. You're right that we can see, we can see how the charger is performing at any given point. There's a heartbeat that it has, and it's, you know, telling us every few seconds, am I okay, right? Or do I have an issue, and this is the issue I have. So we do have the ability to, you know, actually remotely troubleshoot as well, and that's options we give to those customers in their portal. So I think that's been helpful, just to resolve. It might be like a network error, right? The unit just needs to be reset. We've made that as easy as a click of a button, and then the unit might be back online. But yeah, our hardware partners are crucial to those like warranty terms and those operations and maintenance terms to make sure when there is an issue, you know, if we deem it's not a software network issue, we can bring it to a hardware partner and say, hey, it looks like the cable needs to be replaced. You know, can you help the customer out and ship them a new one, and manage that, you know, that actual job to be done.
So that's a win-win for everybody at 250 smackers per year per charger. That's pretty good. Well, I think the time bell has rung for everybody. I'd like to thank Matt and Cornell in absentia, and David and Drew for this was a great presentation. I'm glad we recorded it. We're going to get it out to all the folks in the peer-to-peer and others who may want to look at it. And you can certainly promote it to anybody you want to, because it'll be up on the Green Bank site in about, Vicki, middle of next week, probably.
Oh, definitely by the middle of next week.
Something like that. Yeah, this is really terrific. So I'd like to thank you all for a great job. Anything else right at the end, Kathy or Chuck or anybody, David?
Thanks back, Kathy, Vicki, for setting it up, Dean, and the presenters, and Drew for investing in really cool companies. I think we got the goods now that the state needs. So hopefully we can help you all out.
Maybe, Drew, when you get back from Austin, you can give us a count of how many EV charging stations you saw in your walk around the downtown Austin area.
Can do. Be a good comparison.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Kathy, were you saying something? Or
No, thank you.
okay. Thanks, everybody. We're on again for next month. We'll be sending out an announcement of what that's going to cover on. What's the date, Vicki? It's November.
It'll be November 17th, 2023. I did send out an announcement. I'll be sending it out. As you all know, I send out numerous reminders. It's going to be, we're going to learn about the Enterprise Community Partners in Wells Fargo Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge.
Terrific. Okay.
So I hope to see you there, November 17th at 11:30.
All right, everybody. Thanks. Have good weekends.
Nice weekend.
Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Bring the brawly as usual. Catch you later.
Bye.
See ya.